The story begins with the silent tension of a naval transport fleet holding position in the Atlantic Ocean, just off the coast of North Africa. It is November 1942, and inside the troop ships, thousands of American soldiers wait for the signal to launch the first major U.S. ground offensive of the European War. Among them is Maurice Britt, an oversized 23-year-old lieutenant from Arkansas who had traded a promising career as a professional football player for the uniform of an infantry officer. He stands in the darkness, listening to the grinding of engines cease, replaced by the frantic, clanging noise of preparation as the order is given to lower the landing craft. Britt and his men from the 3rd Infantry Division, the Marne Division, are about to test themselves against the reality of combat for the first time. As they climb down cargo nets into the heaving boats, the voice of President Roosevelt plays over the radio, announcing the invasion has begun, a statement that strikes the men as premature given they are still miles from the beaches of French Morocco. They head toward the shore near Fedala, watching tracers arc across the pre-dawn sky. The initial spectacle of war captivates Britt until French aircraft strafe his landing craft, shattering the illusion of adventure. The realization strikes him with visceral force. Men he does not know are actively trying to kill him. The landing is chaotic. Britt's boat runs ashore, but they are forced to abandon equipment under fire. Later, attempting to salvage vehicles from the surf, his craft sinks, and he watches helplessly as a torpedo strikes a transport ship nearby, sending vital supplies to the bottom of the ocean. Wet, sandy, and lacking heavy weapons, Britt and his company march inland toward Casablanca. The resistance from Vichy French forces is sporadic but lethal, yet the sheer weight of the Allied landing forces a ceasefire within days. Britt's unit secures the area, and he spends the subsequent months guarding the Anfa Hotel during the Casablanca Conference, where Allied leaders demand the unconditional surrender of the Axis powers. While the diplomats strategize, the soldiers train. The 3rd Division comes under the command of Major General Lucian Truscott, a hard-driving cavalryman who transforms the unit with a grueling physical regimen. He enforces a marching pace far exceeding Army regulations, the Truscott Trot, designed to make his infantry move with the speed and endurance of horses. The men condition themselves in the heat of North Africa, preparing for the next amphibious leap. In July 1943, the division strikes Sicily. Among the invaders is a slight, baby-faced private named Audie Murphy, a sharecropper's son from Texas who enlisted to escape poverty and a broken home. Murphy lands at Licata on the southern coast, retching from seasickness but eager to prove his worth. The landing is unopposed on the beaches, but as they push inland, the reality of the campaign sets in: blistering heat, malaria, and a rugged, unforgiving landscape. Murphy's company, led by the reserved but capable Captain Keith Ware, advances on foot across the island. The campaign becomes a race against exhaustion and the German rearguard. General George Patton, commanding the 7th Army, drives the men relentlessly, intent on capturing Messina before the British forces. Murphy, Britt, and Ware find themselves marching across mountainous terrain where mules are more valuable than trucks. The Germans, masters of the fighting retreat, turn every ridge and village into a fortress. At San Fratello, Ware's company faces a dug-in enemy on a steep hillside. The fighting is ferocious, reducing the men to their primal instincts. Murphy witnesses the death of comrades and the strange detachment that comes with killing. He learns to navigate the battlefield with a hunter's intuition, stalking enemy positions through vineyards and olive groves. Ware distinguishes himself as a calm tactician, earning the respect of his men by leading from the front. Britt, leading his own platoon, endures the Truscott Trot across the island's spine. They cover huge distances on foot, outpacing their supply lines, subsisting on scavenged fruit and sheer willpower. The campaign concludes with the capture of Messina, a victory that secures the Mediterranean sea lanes but allows the bulk of the German forces to escape to the Italian mainland. The 3rd Division, battered and thinned by casualties and disease, rests briefly before being hurled into the invasion of Italy. In September 1943, the division lands at Salerno. The beachhead is precarious, threatened by fierce German counterattacks that nearly push the Allies back into the sea. Britt, now commanding L Company, leads his men into the mountains looming over the coast. The terrain is even more formidable than Sicily. At a town called Salerno, Britt demonstrates the aggression that defines his leadership. When his company is pinned down by machine gun fire in a cornfield, Britt borrows a grenade launcher and crawls forward alone, exposing himself to enemy fire to destroy the German position. His physical athleticism, honed on the football field, translates directly to the battlefield as he maneuvers with a deadly grace. The advance up the Italian boot is a slow, muddy slog against a determined enemy who uses the mountainous geography to inflict maximum casualties for every yard of ground yielded. The weather turns against the Allies as autumn rains transform the valleys into quagmires. The capture of Naples offers a brief respite of civilization and vice, before the drive continues toward the formidable winter line. By November, the 3rd Division faces the jagged peaks surrounding the Mignano Gap, the gateway to Rome. The Germans have fortified the heights of Mount Rotondo and Mount Lungo, creating a kill zone that stops the Allied advance cold. Truscott orders a flanking maneuver to seize the heights. Britt's L Company is tasked with taking Mount Rotondo. The assault is a nightmare of endurance. Britt's men climb through freezing rain and darkness, pulling themselves up rock faces to reach the summit. They achieve surprise, taking the German positions, but soon find themselves isolated and under siege. The Germans launch a massive counterattack to reclaim the strategic peak. Britt's company is decimated, reduced to a fraction of its strength. On the morning of November 10th, the situation becomes critical. German infantry, supported by heavy machine guns and artillery, swarm the American positions. Britt, realizing his defensive line is about to crumble, takes charge of the chaos. He runs from foxhole to foxhole, rallying his terrified men. When a German machine gun crew sets up to enfilade his position, Britt engages them in a personal duel. He stands in the open, hurling grenades with the accuracy of a quarterback. Bullet strikes shatter his canteen and binoculars, and shrapnel tears into his side and back, but he refuses to seek cover. He grabs a carbine and fires until it is empty, then seizes an M1 rifle from a wounded soldier and continues to fight. His one-man rampage breaks the momentum of the German assault. Britt single-handedly kills and wounds dozens of enemy soldiers, forcing them to retreat. Despite his own severe wounds, he refuses evacuation until he has organized a counter-defense and ensured his remaining men are positioned to hold the hill. His actions save the company and the battalion's flank, earning him a recommendation for the Medal of Honor. While Britt recovers in a field hospital, the campaign grinds to a halt at the Gustav Line, anchored by the monastery of Monte Cassino. The mountains are impassable, the weather atrocious, and the German defenses impregnable. To break the stalemate, Allied High Command plans an ambitious amphibious end run, a landing at Anzio, just south of Rome, intended to cut German supply lines and panic their rear echelon. In January 1944, the 3rd Division lands at Anzio. The initial landing catches the Germans off guard, and the road to Rome lies open. However, the Corps commander, fearing a trap, orders the troops to dig in and consolidate the beachhead rather than advancing rapidly. The delay proves catastrophic. The German commander, Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, reacts with lightning speed, ringing the low-lying beachhead with artillery and reinforcements. The Allies are trapped in a marshy, flat confined space, under constant observation from the German-held Alban Hills. Britt, having returned to duty despite his injuries from Rotondo, finds himself in a new kind of hell. There is no cover at Anzio. Every inch of ground is pre-registered by German artillery. The soldiers live in waterlogged foxholes, often referred to as graves for the living. The psychological strain is immense. The Germans launch wave after wave of infantry and tank attacks, trying to drive the Allies into the sea. During one such engagement in February near the Mussolini Canal, Britt's company is tasked with holding a vital road junction. The fighting is close quarters and savage. Britt maneuvers his men to repel an armored thrust, calling in artillery on his own coordinates to stop the German tanks. In a farmhouse used as a command post, Britt is observing the enemy movements when a tank shell strikes the building directly. The explosion is devastating. Britt is thrown across the room, blinded by dust and debris. When he attempts to stand, he realizes his right arm has been shattered and partially severed. His foot is also crushed. Despite the catastrophic injury and massive blood loss, Britt retains consciousness long enough to issue final orders to his executive officer, ensuring the defense will hold. He is evacuated to the beachhead hospital, his war over. The loss of his arm ends his athletic career and sends him home as a maimed hero, the first American soldier to receive the Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, and Silver Star in a single war. Back at Anzio, the situation deteriorates. The stalemate turns into a war of attrition reminiscent of the First World War trenches. Audie Murphy, now a seasoned sergeant, endures the misery of the beachhead. He watches friends die from random shellfire and sniper bullets. The constant proximity of death hardens him. He becomes a precise, unsentimental killer, volunteering for patrols to hunt Germans in the no-man's land between the lines. His youthful appearance belies a terrifying competence in violence. He kills without hesitation and risks his life repeatedly to protect the dwindling number of original men in his platoon. The 3rd Division suffers horrendous casualties holding the perimeter. They repulse massive German offensives in February and March, often fighting hand-to-hand as enemy infantry infiltrate their trench lines. The earth is churned into a landscape of mud and craters. Murphy, plagued by malaria and fatigue, refuses to leave the line, driven by a fierce loyalty to the few surviving members of his unit. Finally, in May 1944, the Allies launch a breakout offensive. The plan requires the 3rd Division to smash through the German ring of steel at Cisterna. The attack is preceded by a massive artillery barrage, but the German paratroopers and SS units defending the town refuse to yield. The fighting is block by block, house by house. Murphy's company is thrown into the assault, advancing across open fields swept by machine gun fire. In the chaos of the breakout, acts of desperate bravery become commonplace. Men charge machine gun nests with nothing but grenades and rifles. Murphy takes command of his platoon when the officers are killed or wounded. He navigates the confusion with a cold clarity, directing fire and leading assaults on enemy strongpoints. The division suffers the highest casualties of any American division in a single day during the war, but they break the German line. The road to Rome is finally open. The Germans retreat north, fighting a delaying action. The Americans pursue them, driven by the desire to capture the First Axis capital. On June 4, 1944, the 3rd Division enters Rome. The population greets them with hysterical joy, showering the dusty, blood-stained infantrymen with flowers and wine. It is a moment of triumph, but for men like Murphy and Ware, it is overshadowed by the memory of the thousands of friends left behind in the mud of Anzio and the mountains of the Winter Line. The liberation of Rome marks the end of the Italian campaign for the 3rd Division. As they rest in the city, refitting and absorbing fresh replacements, the news breaks of the massive Allied landings in Normandy. The focus of the war shifts decisively to France. The Mediterranean theater, where they have fought and bled for nearly 2 years, becomes a secondary front. For Maurice Britt, now back in the United States, the war has become a series of bond drives and speeches, a public performance of heroism that masks the private pain of his disfigurement and the loss of his identity as an athlete. For Keith Ware and Audie Murphy, the war is far from over. They are survivors of a brutal culling, hardened professionals who have learned that survival is a matter of luck as much as skill. As the division prepares to leave Italy, the leadership changes. General Truscott is promoted, and new officers arrive. The men sense that the next phase will be different. They are no longer the inexperienced amateurs who landed in North Africa. They are the most experienced assault troops in the U.S. Army, but they are also exhausted, cynical, and wary. They know that the invasion of southern France lies ahead, and beyond that, the heart of Germany itself. The departure from Italy signifies a fundamental shift in the narrative. The grinding, vertical war of the Italian peninsula is behind them. The war of movement in France awaits. The surviving characters stand at a threshold, carrying the physical and psychological scars of the Mediterranean, bracing themselves for the final, bloody drive into the Reich. The story pauses here, with Britt home, Rome liberated, and the 3rd Division poised to board the ships once again, leaving the graves of their comrades behind in the Italian soil. Before we move on, please subscribe to our channel, Operation Zero. Don't forget to hit like and share this with fellow military enthusiasts. Alright, let's get back to it. While the 3rd Infantry Division recuperates in the warmth of the Italian summer, the war opens a new and violent chapter hundreds of miles to the northwest. On the morning of June 6, 1944, a young soldier named Michael Daly finds himself in a landing craft churning toward the coast of Normandy. He is a replacement in the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, a unit in which his father had served with distinction during the previous World War. Daly is a West Point dropout who enlisted as a private to prove his worth, carrying the heavy weight of his father's legacy and his own desire for redemption. He lands at Omaha Beach in the second wave, witnessing the catastrophic aftermath of the initial assault. Bodies bob in the surf, and the beach is a graveyard of burning vehicles and shattered equipment. Daly survives the crossing of the shingle and the ascent up the bluffs, moving inland into the hedgerow country. The fighting in Normandy is claustrophobic and vicious, a battle of inches fought between earthen embankments that hide German machine guns and snipers. Daly adapts quickly, discovering a latent talent for the chaotic geometry of infantry combat. He learns to suppress his fear, driven by the necessity of survival and the urge to protect the men around him. Throughout the summer, he fights across France, earning a battlefield commission and a reputation for aggressive leadership. In September, near the German border city of Aachen, he is wounded by shrapnel and evacuated to England, his war temporarily suspended while he recovers. Back in the Mediterranean, the 3rd Division prepares for its own invasion of France. In August 1944, they launch Operation Dragoon, targeting the southern coast of the Riviera. The landings are a stark contrast to the misery of Anzio. Supported by overwhelming naval and aerial bombardment, the division storms ashore near Saint-Tropez against lighter resistance. The weather is balmy, the setting picturesque, but the violence remains personal and sudden. Audie Murphy, now a staff sergeant, lands with his platoon and pushes inland through vineyards and pine forests. Near the town of Ramatoul, his unit encounters a German strongpoint. During the firefight, Murphy's closest friend, Laddie Tipton, spots a German soldier waving a white flag. Tipton stands to accept the surrender and is immediately cut down by a hidden machine gun. He dies instantly. The death of Tipton snaps something fundamental in Murphy. The grief and shock transmute instantly into a cold, blinding rage. He abandons all caution, grabbing a German machine gun and advancing alone on the enemy position. He kills the soldiers who feign surrender and then storms the strongpoint, wiping out the defenders with grenades and small arms fire. It is a moment of transformation. The last vestiges of the boy from Texas are burned away, replaced by a grim, relentless proficiency in killing. He returns to his friend's body, weeping in a rare display of emotion before locking his grief away to focus on the war that still demands his full attention. The German forces in southern France, threatened with encirclement, begin a desperate retreat up the Rhone Valley. The 3rd Division gives chase, moving with a speed that exhilarates the men after the static agony of Italy. They race north, riding on tanks and trucks, cheered by liberated French civilians who shower them with fruit and wine. The pursuit is relentless. At Montélimar, the division creates a kill zone that traps a massive German convoy. American artillery and air power obliterate the enemy column, turning miles of road into a corridor of twisted metal and burning flesh known as the Avenue of Stenches. The destruction is absolute, a testament to the growing material superiority of the Allied forces. As the summer fades into autumn, the nature of the campaign changes. The division pushes northeast toward the German border, leaving the sun-drenched valley for the dark, foreboding terrain of the Vosges Mountains. The geography is hostile, characterized by dense pine forests, steep granite ridges, and constant rain that turns the ground into a freezing slurry. The German resistance stiffens as they reach the approaches to the fatherland. General Lucian Truscott, the architect of the division's fighting spirit, is promoted and leaves to command a new army, a departure that strikes a melancholy note among the veterans who revered him. In October, the division encounters a formidable obstacle near the village of Clary, a granite quarry turned into a fortress. The Germans have tunneled into the rock, creating impregnable bunkers protected by interlocking fields of fire. The battle for the quarry becomes a gruesome stalemate. Keith Ware, now a lieutenant colonel commanding a battalion, orchestrates the assault. He probes the defenses, looking for weakness, while his men endure mortar barrages and sniper fire that whittles down the rifle companies. Murphy, leading his platoon, is in the thick of the fighting. The quarry is a nightmare of ricocheting bullets and stone splinters. During a patrol, he saves the lives of Ware and another senior officer who have moved too far forward, engaging a German machine gun crew that ambushes them. Murphy's instincts are now preternaturally sharp. He moves through the woods like a ghost, sensing danger before it manifests. However, the law of averages eventually catches up with him. Later in October, while stalking a sniper in the dense woods, Murphy is shot in the hip. He manages to kill his attacker, firing one-handed while lying on the ground, but the wound is serious. He is evacuated to a hospital in the rear, where the incision becomes gangrenous. He spends months recovering, engaging in a brief romance with a nurse and struggling with the boredom of convalescence. The war seems distant, yet he is pulled back to it by a sense of obligation to the dwindling number of men in his old platoon. While Murphy heals, Michael Daly returns to the continent. Having recovered from his wounds, he uses his father's connections to General Alexander Patch, now commanding the 7th Army, to secure a transfer to the 3rd Division. Patch, grieving the recent death of his own son in battle, tries to keep Daly on his staff as an aide, hoping to spare him the meat grinder of the infantry. Daly refuses. He insists on a combat assignment, driven by a need to be with the line troops. In December 1944, he reports to the 15th Infantry Regiment, arriving just as the winter descends with brutal fury. The Allies have reached the Rhine in places, but a large German pocket remains on the west bank around the city of Colmar. This Colmar pocket becomes the focus of the winter campaign. The conditions are appalling. Temperatures drop well below zero, and snow blankets the battlefield. The ground freezes so hard that digging foxholes requires explosives. Men suffer from trench foot and frostbite, their weapons jamming in the icy air. Murphy rejoins his unit in January 1945, limping slightly on his healing hip. He finds the company decimated, filled with green replacements who look to him as a legend. He is promoted to lieutenant and given command of Company B, not out of ambition, but because there is no one else left to lead it. The burden of command weighs heavily on him. He knows that most of the fresh-faced boys under his charge will likely be dead or wounded within weeks. The battle for the Colmar pocket begins in earnest. The Germans, emboldened by their Ardennes offensive to the north, fight with renewed fanaticism. They defend every village and wood line, using the heavy Tiger tanks to devastating effect against the lightly armored American infantry. In late January, the division assaults the village of Holzwehr. The attack is a disaster. Murphy's company, depleted and exhausted, advances across an open, snow-covered field. They are met by a counterattack of German infantry supported by tanks. The American tank destroyers supporting Murphy are hit and set ablaze. Realizing his men are about to be overrun, Murphy orders them to retreat to the cover of the woods while he stays behind to direct artillery fire. He climbs onto the burning hull of a tank destroyer, manning its .50 caliber machine gun. The vehicle is a time bomb, filled with fuel and ammunition, flames licking around the turret. Alone, exposed, and silhouetted against the snow and smoke, Murphy engages the advancing German line. He cuts down squad after squad of infantry, turning the machine gun on the enemy even as their bullets ring off the metal beneath his feet. He calls in artillery strikes on his own position, forcing the German tanks to button up and withdraw. For an hour, he holds the line single-handedly, a small, solitary figure defying an entire attack force. He ceases fire only when his ammunition is exhausted and the Germans have retreated. He limps back to his men, dazed and unwounded, having personally halted the enemy advance and saved his company from annihilation. While Murphy holds the line at Holzwehr, Keith Ware faces his own crucible near Sigelsheim. His battalion is tasked with taking a strategic height known as Hill 351. The hill is heavily fortified, defended by elite SS mountain troops who refuse to yield. The initial attacks fail, and the rifle companies are pinned down by withering fire. Ware, realizing that the attack is faltering, moves to the front. He finds a tank support unit and personally leads a reconnaissance of the hill, walking upright through the mortar bursts to identify the German positions. He then coordinates a renewed assault, moving forward on foot ahead of the tanks. Armed with a Browning automatic rifle, Ware charges the enemy trenches. He moves from one machine gun nest to the next, neutralizing them with grenades and rifle fire, inspiring his stalled troops to follow. His tactical brilliance and physical courage break the deadlock. The battalion sweeps the hill, dislodging the SS defenders and opening the road to the Rhine. Michael Daly, now commanding a company in the same regiment, distinguishes himself in the grinding attritional battles of the pocket. He leads his men with a quiet, reckless bravery, often walking point on patrols to spare his soldiers the risk. In the ruins of French villages, he engages in close-quarters combat, clearing houses room by room. He earns multiple citations for valor, his leadership style characterized by a protective ferocity toward his men and a fatalistic disregard for his own safety. By February 1945, the Colmar pocket is crushed. The 3rd Division links up with other Allied units, and the last German resistance on the west bank of the Rhine collapses. The victory is complete but costly. The division has suffered thousands of casualties in the freezing mud and snow. The men are hollowed out, their reserves of physical and emotional stamina depleted. As the winter gives way to a wet, gray spring, the 3rd Division stands on the banks of the Rhine River. Behind them lies a trail of liberated towns and fresh graves stretching back to the beaches of North Africa. Ahead lies Germany. The river is the final psychological and physical barrier protecting the heart of the Reich. The men know that crossing it will mean the end of the war is near, but they also know that the Germans will fight for their homeland with the desperation of the doomed. Murphy, Daly, and Ware have survived the crucible of the winter campaign. They have been transformed into efficient instruments of war, decorated and revered, yet privately haunted by the magnitude of the slaughter. Murphy, now recommended for the Medal of Honor for his stand at Holzwehr, waits for the order to cross. Ware, his reputation as a combat leader solidified, prepares his battalion for the final offensive. Daly, the youngest of the three, readies his company for the breach of the Siegfried Line. The narrative pauses at the river's edge. The great obstacle of the Rhine swirls before them, dark and foreboding. The division brings up bridging equipment and artillery, massing for the final strike. The soldiers clean their weapons and write letters home, the specter of the final battles looming large. They have broken the crust of the German defenses in the west, but the core of the enemy resistance remains to be crushed. The story stands poised at the gateway to Germany, the final act of the tragedy ready to unfold. Before we move on, please subscribe to our channel, Operation Zero. Don't forget to hit like and share this with fellow military enthusiasts. Alright, let's get back to it. On the night of March 25, 1945, the final physical barrier to the German heartland is breached. Engineers push pontoon sections into the dark, swirling waters of the Rhine River between Worms and Mannheim, constructing the bridges that will carry the 3rd Division into the enemy's interior. In the early hours of the following morning, the artillery opens up with a violence that turns the sky a lurid red, signaling the start of the crossing. Regiments row across the current, enduring mortar fire and the chaos of sinking boats, but by dawn, they stand on the eastern bank. The crust of the German defense is broken, and the war transforms from a grinding battle of attrition into a race. Michael Daly and his company cross the river and plunge into the forests beyond. When they emerge, they find the Autobahn, the concrete arteries of the Reich, stretching out before them. The division mounts trucks and tanks, surging forward with a speed that rivals their dash up the Rhone Valley the previous summer. The resistance they encounter is sporadic and schizophrenic. Some German units surrender in droves, while others, particularly the SS, fight with the nihilistic fury of men who know they are doomed. The target is Nuremberg, the spiritual capital of National Socialism, the city of rallies and race laws. Hitler has declared it a fortress to be defended to the last man, and the local Nazi commander, Karl Holz, prepares to turn the medieval center into a slaughterhouse. As the 3rd Division approaches from the north in mid-April, they find a city already pulverized by aerial bombardment, a moonscape of rubble and shattered timber where snipers and anti-aircraft guns wait in ambush. Keith Ware's battalion attacks the city's outskirts, seizing a battery of heavy guns before pushing into the labyrinth of ruined streets. The fighting is treacherous. The Germans use the debris as cover, firing from cellars and the skeletons of buildings. Daly leads his company with a reckless disregard for his own safety, determined to shield his men from the worst of the combat. He moves at the point of the attack, a tall, thin figure sprinting between piles of masonry, drawing enemy fire to reveal their positions. On April 18th, Daly engages in a single-handed rampage through the shattered industrial district. When his unit is pinned down near a railway station, he charges the enemy machine gun positions alone. He duels with German infantry across the tracks and through a ruined park, killing 15 enemy soldiers in a series of close-quarters firefights. His actions clear the way for his battalion to advance toward the ancient walled city at Nuremberg's center. He survives the day unscathed, his luck holding against the odds, earning a recommendation for the Medal of Honor. The following morning, the assault on the inner city begins. The medieval walls are thick and imposing, defended by the last die-hard SS troops. Daly leads his men through a park toward the fortifications. He confers with a fellow officer, Major Britt, devising a plan to scale the wall and outflank the defenders. As Daly climbs a mound of rubble to peer over the ramparts, a sniper's bullet finds him. The shot strikes him in the head, tearing through his ear and shattering his jaw and palate. He tumbles back down the debris, choking on his own blood. Barr rushes to his side and, seeing that Daly is suffocating, forces a pencil down his throat to open an airway. The crude tracheotomy saves his life. Daly is evacuated to a field hospital, his war ending not in triumph, but in a haze of pain and a struggle for breath on an operating table. While Daly fights for his life, the 3rd Division completes the conquest of Nuremberg. The American flag is raised over the Adolf Hitler Platz, a symbolic stake in the heart of the Nazi regime. The victory is punctuated by a spectacular ceremony at the Zeppelin Field, the vast stadium where Hitler once mesmerized the masses. On April 22, General Alexander Patch stands on the concrete rostrum and places the Medal of Honor around the necks of 5 soldiers from the division, including Keith Ware. As the ceremony concludes, engineers detonate a massive swastika atop the stadium, blowing the stone symbol of the Third Reich into dust. The war in Europe rushes toward its conclusion. The division pushes south into Bavaria, sweeping aside the remnants of the Wehrmacht. They capture Munich and drive into the Alps, racing toward Hitler's mountain retreat at Berchtesgaden. Ware's battalion seizes town after town, the resistance evaporating into surrender. On May 7th, the Germans sign the unconditional surrender. The guns fall silent. For Audie Murphy, the end of the war brings no euphoria. He is in Cannes, waiting for a flight home, when the bells ring out for victory. He sits in his hotel room, weapon in hand, feeling an immense, crushing emptiness. The adrenaline that sustained him for 2 years drains away, leaving only the ghosts of the men he could not save. He is the most decorated soldier in American history, a survivor of battles that consumed entire companies, but he feels old and hollowed out at the age of 21. In June, Murphy receives the Medal of Honor in a ceremony near Salzburg. He stands before General Patch, a small, scarred figure in a uniform that seems too big for him. He accepts the award not for himself, but as a caretaker for the dead. Shortly after, he boards a plane for the United States, leaving the continent where he left his youth and his innocence. The return home is a disorienting blur of parades and adulation. Murphy lands in San Antonio to a hero's welcome. Hundreds of thousands of people line the streets, cheering the baby-faced killer who graced the cover of Life magazine. He is feted at banquets and press conferences, celebrated as the embodiment of American martial virtue. Yet, beneath the public smile, he is disintegrating. He suffers from insomnia and nightmares, sleeping with a loaded pistol under his pillow. The sudden silence of peace is deafening after the constant noise of war. Daly, recovering from his horrific facial wound, receives his Medal of Honor at the White House from President Truman in August 1945. He stands in the East Room, pale and scarred, listening to the citations of other men who lost limbs or eyesight. He feels a profound sense of survivor's guilt, conscious that the medal around his neck belongs more to the men who died following him than to himself. He returns to Connecticut, drifting through the post-war years in a haze of alcohol and aimlessness, trying to find a purpose that can match the intensity of the infantry. Maurice Britt, the first of the quartet to return, builds a life in Arkansas. He channels his drive into business and eventually politics, becoming the state's lieutenant governor. He carries the physical legacy of the war, a missing arm and a scarred foot, with a stoic grace, refusing to let his disability define him. He remains a quiet, steady presence, a counterpoint to the volatile celebrity of Murphy. Ware chooses to remain in the army. The military is his vocation, the structure and discipline a comfort after the chaos of combat. He rises steadily through the ranks, his leadership style maturing from the raw aggression of the battlefield to the strategic oversight of a general officer. He marries and starts a family, though the war lingers in his sleep, manifesting in nightmares where he relives the commands of battle, flailing his arms in the dark. Murphy drifts to Hollywood, invited by James Cagney. He struggles as an actor, fighting against his lack of training and his thick Texas accent. He sleeps in a gym, works odd jobs, and wrestles with his PTSD before the diagnosis exists. Eventually, he finds success in westerns and war movies, playing versions of himself on screen. In 1955, he stars in the film adaptation of his own memoir, To Hell and Back. The experience is a surreal trauma. He reenacts the death of his best friend and his own most desperate moments for the cameras, forcing himself to relive the worst days of his life for entertainment. The film is a massive success, cementing his status as a legend, but it does not cure the darkness inside him. He spends his later years gambling away his fortune, plagued by money troubles and the unshakable shadow of the war. In the 1960s, the narrative of the four men intersects with the next great American conflict. Keith Ware, now a major general, requests a combat command in Vietnam. He arrives in 1968, just in time for the Tet Offensive. He leads the defense of Saigon with the same cool competence he displayed in the Colmar Pocket, organizing the counterattack that clears the city. He is given command of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, the unit Michael Daly served with in Normandy. Ware leads from the front, flying over the jungle in his command helicopter to direct battles, unable to detach himself from the action. On September 13, 1968, Ware's luck finally runs out. While flying over a battle near the Cambodian border to supervise his troops, his helicopter is shot down by enemy anti-aircraft fire. He crashes into the jungle and is killed instantly, becoming the only Medal of Honor recipient from World War II to die in action in Vietnam. His death shocks his surviving comrades from the 3rd Division, a stark reminder that the war never truly ended for men like him. Murphy is devastated by Ware's death. He sees the Vietnam War consuming a new generation and fears for his own sons. He speaks out against the conflict, arguing that it is wrong to ask young men to die in a war they are not permitted to win. In May 1971, Murphy boards a private plane in Atlanta, headed for a business meeting in Virginia. The plane flies into bad weather and crashes into the side of a mountain. Murphy is killed, his body identified by the scars of the sniper wound he received in the Vosges forests. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery, his grave becoming the 2nd most visited site after the Kennedy flame. Maurice Britt passes away in 1995, succumbing to heart failure after a lifetime of service to his state. He dies as he lived, a man of quiet dignity who traded his athletic dreams for a legacy of leadership, leaving behind a family who knew him not as a war hero, but as a father and grandfather. Michael Daly survives them all. He eventually finds his way out of the darkness of his post-war years. He marries, starts a family, and finds redemption in service to others. He devotes decades to volunteering at a local hospital, sitting with the dying, comforting the poor and the lonely. The aggression that defined him as a soldier is transmuted into a fierce compassion. He rarely speaks of the war, keeping his medals locked away, but he never forgets the men he led. Late in his life, he returns to the battlefields of Europe, walking the ground at Nuremberg and the Colmar Pocket, communing with the ghosts of his youth. In 2008, facing terminal cancer, Daly confronts his own death with the same fatalistic courage he showed at the Siegfried Line. He dies at home, surrounded by his family, the last of the great captains of the 3rd Division to leave the stage. His death marks the severing of the final living link to the specific, terrible history of the Marne men. The story ends with the image of Daly's funeral, where the eulogies speak not of the violence he wrought, but of the peace he eventually found, closing the circle on a generation that walked through fire and spent the rest of their lives trying to wash the soot from their souls.